Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this daily devotional. One of the things that can really keep us from moving forward in what God wants for us is us downplaying what we think God can do through us. We can be our own worst enemies. How often do you hold yourself back from doing things that you think would be great to do for God, and yet you just think, I don't have enough, I'm not enough, I'm not like this other person, I'm not a great speaker, or I don't know all the answers, and we hold ourselves back because we have this long list of things that we think we're not. Well, John chapter 1 verses 40 through 42 is something really important to say about the different types of people that have a place in God's kingdom and what God can do through even the most unlikely of individuals. The context here is that some people are starting to follow Jesus. They had heard John the Baptist speak, and some of the people who heard John the Baptist speak are seeing Jesus, and now they want to start following him. And so we pick this story up in verse 40 of chapter 1 of John. It says, one of the two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which means the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. You should be called Cephas, which means Peter. So this is kind of the origin story of Peter. If you know Peter, he was one of the great early leaders of the church. He had some major epic failures, but he also was one of the disciples that was closest to Christ. And he's the one who, on the day of Pentecost, stands up, gives this tremendous sermon. 3,000 people come to faith in one day, and the church gets launched from there. He ends up writing several books of the New Testament. Peter is one of the biggest influencers on the start of Christianity. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to be like, man, we see the Peters, we see the great leaders, we see the great communicators. We're like, man, I can't do things for God like them. And so because we think that we can't do things for God like them, we end up downplaying what God can do through us. Here's what we have to understand. Peter's story didn't start with Peter. Peter's story did not start with Peter. No, Peter's story started with his brother Andrew. His brother Andrew's the one who introduced Peter to Jesus. Right? There's no Peter if there's no Andrew. There's no great leader in the church if there's no younger brother who's bringing his brother to meet with Christ. See, we might not all be able to be Peter, but we can all be Andrew. We might not all have great speaking ability and leading ability and someone who's used to be this big influence, but I tell you what, we can all be someone who take responsibility to influence those who are closest to us. We don't hear much about Andrew in the Bible. We don't know if he was a great speaker. We don't know what his abilities are, but we do know he loved his brother. We do know that when he met Jesus, he wanted his brother to come know him, and so he brought his brother to Jesus. We can't all be Peter, but we can all be Andrew. And we need to understand that God's tremendous kingdom purposes often move forward through simple acts of faithfulness in just telling people about Jesus. God's just tremendous, magnificent, eternity-shaping kingdom purposes often move forward through simple, ordinary people taking the common act of just telling other people about Jesus. We can't all be Peter, but we can be Andrew, and we can be those who have an influence on individuals. And so my encouragement to you would be, don't downplay what God can do through you. Don't downplay what God can do through you, because God can use you to reach an individual, and you never know what the impact of reaching that individual might be. Who are you bringing to Jesus? Who has God put in your life that he wants you to bring Jesus to? Maybe there's someone that you need to invite to church this week. You need to send them the link to, the online church experience. You need to send them a daily devotional that you think will encourage them. You need to call them and have a follow-up conversation about where they're at spiritually. Like, who do you have in your life that God has given you to share about Jesus? We're not all going to change the course of history like Peter did, but I tell you what, Andrew was the one who changed Peter. Andrew was the one who brought Peter to Jesus so that Peter's life could be changed by Jesus. Who has God put in your life that he wants you to reach for him? Don't downplay what God can do through you just because you're not a Peter. No, embrace our role. We should all embrace our role of the call to be Andrew and to reach those around us with the good news of Jesus Christ. Who does God want you to bring Jesus to this week?